Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And we are so excited to have our friend back here, Frankie Hart, who is really doing things, I'll say the holistic way, right? Yeah, she's the
Mhm.
creator and owner of her own company, Satya Life Yoga, based out of Lakeland, Florida. And it's a great studio. She does so many classes and so many things. And you could be there in person or virtually as well. Let me have her introduce herself. Please say hello, Miss Frankie.
Hi, Jill. So, as Jill said so perfectly, my name is Frankie Hart, and I opened Satya Life Yoga about 18 years ago in downtown Lakeland. It is a yoga studio where we offer group classes, private lessons, Tai Chi classes, Qigong classes, lots of different kinds of yoga for people from very new to yoga to people who are more experienced or advanced, aerial yoga, yoga bar, and lots of specialty workshops. And I also have a yoga teacher training program that I'm hoping we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about today.
Absolutely. And let's just remind everyone website, best forms of contact before we begin today's show.
The website is Satya, Satya, life, life.com. And that's full of information. And we'd love for you guys to call, text 863-802-YOGA, or you can email us at info@satyalife.com.
Perfect. So last time we were talking about different ways to cultivate our life force energy, right? So,
Absolutely.
so for today, I think you wanted to digress a little to talk a little bit about that a little more in depth in the meantime. And the life force energy, what is the name of it?
All right. So life force energy is a fascinating phrase because in the yoga practice, in the Yoga Sutras, the Sanskrit term for that is prana. And in the Qigong tradition, which is the tradition of Tai Chi, the word for it is Qi. So if you hear us talking about prana or Qi, or if you're familiar with Reiki, so the key of Reiki is also the vital life force energy, that's the same thing, just different languages, different words to talk about this amazing life energy that is you.
Amazing. And the life force energy that is us. Let's talk about the importance of, conserving it, right?
Right. So we talked last time about if you are good at accumulating chi, but you're spending it, it's the equivalent of earning a lot of money, but you're spending a lot of money. And I think the best way for people to understand that is like when somebody wins the lottery, oftentimes they end up more in debt after they won the lottery than before. So more chi, more money doesn't necessarily mean a greater quality of life. And that's so positive to me, actually, because it helps you understand, wait, maybe I'm going down the wrong road. Maybe I'm putting pressure on myself in a way that is not actually what's going to improve my life, my health, my relationships, my happiness, right? So we want to conserve our chi. And then the next thing that we talked about was balancing chi. So if I am all go and no rest, if I am all, just I sit all day at work and then I go home and I sit on the sofa, and over the weekends I sit in the car and drive long distances, then the body has no balance. And we have physical issues and discomfort, even organ issues that can come from too much sitting. My favorite quote is sitting is the new smoking. And that came out about 5, 6 years ago. And I love that because we are bodies that are meant to move, but we're also in our minds and our hearts. We're meant to be creators and we are meant to be uplifters. And so creating that balance for ourselves in the mind, in the body, that's part of what I want to talk about today, because sometimes you might say, well, I can't get to a place of balance because I have this negativity. I have negative emotion. I have negative thinking. How can I get there? So how can we transform that negative emotional stress into positive life force energy?
Ooh, how can we? This is exciting work because it's important for so many people. Where do we begin? My goodness. So, we're going to talk about transforming it in a sense.
Yes, yes. So I love Winnie the Pooh. Those books are wonderful. And if you are a Tai Chi practitioner out there interested in teach Qigong, there's some wonderful books called The Tao of Pooh or The Day of Piglet, I think, is the second one. But the Tao of Pooh, let's say, is a wonderful writing. And if we think of the character Eeyore, right? So
Yep, I
Eeyore is
remember you. Yep.
always right, always something is wrong, right? Glass half empty, right? And Pooh has that wonder. That wonder, everything is wonderful because he is in a state of observing. He is in a state of participating in his life and being able to really be present.
Yeah,
So at
that's the
first he
hard
comes
thing.
across, right, as a very simple character, but in that simplicity, he is free to be present and to kind of ask the questions that we, even as adults, like to ponder, right? To
Yep.
understand who we are and what are we doing here in this great journey of life. So when we talk about transforming negative energy, I think the first thing is to look at chronic negative thoughts. So chronic thoughts can be great thoughts if they're positive, right? But it's
Yep.
chronic negative thinking. And I think if all of us just were to sit quietly for a moment, we could think of one or two that go through our day, who knows, a million times a day,
Mm.
right? Way in the background, like that hamster wheel of subconscious thought that kind of breaks its way through the surface every now and then, especially when we feel any kind of challenge or stress. And one I like to talk about a lot because I think it's relative to many or relevant to many, many of us is the thought that we're not good enough,
Yep.
right? So we suffer with this thought and it affects, it just permeates every aspect of our life. So a thought as simple as I'm not good enough is a chronic negative thought. And the reason it's chronic is because we keep thinking it.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning, Jill, we might have been very young and we might have had a really meaningful, poignant experience where someone we loved and cared about, valued very much,
True.
told us that what we did or who we are was not enough. And that might have stuck with us, right? Or we might have had a whole series of small events where someone or many people, it seemed, said that to us. What we did was not enough. Who we are is not enough, right? And the second one is far more damaging, isn't it? Because we're not what we do. We are who we are.
True.
So it's one thing if, and this is so important with children, right? As they're developing skills, it's one thing to say, oh, we didn't form the letter A correctly. Let's
Yep.
look, let's see how we can do it. It's a whole other thing to tell a child that they're stupid, right? That
Ah,
is so damaging,
yep.
so damaging. And the good thing is culturally, we're starting, I think, I really believe we're starting to understand how we speak to each other and how we speak to children really, really matters. Because children then can embody
Out of
this
that.
language to themselves. And then we can be an 85-year-old child inside, right? We want to keep our child like
Wouldn't that be
nature,
great? Yes.
but we don't want to feel like we're still not good enough and we've spent our whole life,
Yeah.
trying to prove ourselves, right? That is exhausting. And when we don't feel good about ourselves, we can't really fully enter into loving relationships. We fear intimacy. We are afraid of taking risks. We're afraid of being vulnerable. And, to be really in a loving relationship, we have to allow some vulnerability.
Oh, well, and how do we start this process? I mean, it is a long process, but if you want it enough, you can make it happen.
Yes,
You have to believe. Hence your king of queen of positive thinking and right. And that kind of
yes.
energy gets
It
recycled and it's like karma comes back around in a sense.
Yes. And that beautiful phrase, pay it forward, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So, first of all, every step in the right direction, every step towards balancing our chi or balancing our energy, our thinking, is bringing you closer to your true self. You
Got
have
it.
never lost your true self. Even if a million people and you think you are not good enough, you are.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of just acknowledging, maybe I don't quite believe it yet, but there's a part of me that knows it's true. And sometimes when you really struggle with that, it might help you to look at a young child, even someone you don't know from a distance, or, a beautiful older person that you see sitting there having a cup of coffee. You don't know them, but you see the life force energy in them.
Yeah.
You see them as this beautiful being. And then you can just reflect a little. Well, if I can see that in that person,
It's
perhaps, right? I can see that in
mhm.
myself. Yeah. So meditation is a really powerful skill, Jill, because when we meditate, we quiet the mind. And we use many different techniques. The Yoga Sutras is full of different forms. The Qigong umbrella has many, many different forms for meditating. But the main idea is we start to quiet the mind from this habitual hamster wheel thinking. And when we get off of that, we start to think about our breath and we start to change the channel from the negative thinking. We, in the asana practice or in doing the Tai Chi forms, we're focusing on what we're doing with our body. You know, is my right foot pointed this way? How is my hip turned? How is my breathing? Ah, I've already
Uh-huh.
forgotten about that fight I had with my loved one at home or the stress I had at my job, right?
Yep.
So the physical practices and the practice of meditation help us enter into a field where we change the channel, we shift gears, and that restores us. I like to encourage people, just like when you wake up in the morning, and we talked about that a little bit last time, um, you've got a clean slate. How long can you linger in that clean slate? You know, maybe you haven't even gotten off your mat yet, and you've opened your phone and there's a text and it hits you, and you're slammed right back into the stress level. But if we can observe that, we start
Mm.
to have something that the Yoga Sutras talk about as viveka. And viveka is the ability to discern where I am, how I feel, where my body is in space. And so if I can notice, I was in this peaceful state and I'm getting, pushed into another state of emotion that I'm not enjoying, if I
Hmm.
can catch it before it gains too much momentum, I can really change that.
I love it. So you're here helping people transform in so many ways, and we deserve to feel good, right?
Absolutely. That's a huge, huge part of this, Jill. Every person on the planet deserves to feel good. It is their It's why we came here. You know, even when I say it's our right, that doesn't even seem right to me. It's our nature. That's really a better way to say it. It's our nature to be healthy. It's our nature to be happy. It's our nature to love. That's why it doesn't feel good when we are ornery. That's why it doesn't feel good when we're pushing others down or negative, because this inner being, the inner self, does not believe us when we
No.
are going astray.
Well, you say, yeah, because it's like, are you aware that you're the writer of your thoughts? Sometimes we're
Mhm.
not, and that's what's affecting us.
Yes. And isn't it tremendously powerful to realize that this negative thought that I'm carrying around, maybe all day, maybe for the last 30 years, isn't even a thought I believe?
Yeah,
It's just a thought I have kept thinking. So, one of the things that we want to really understand is a belief is just a thought I keep thinking.
got it.
So, in order to start to understand what your beliefs are, it's really valuable to become quiet and listen, right? So if you're listening, then you have what we call consciousness. And in the consciousness, you can make change because you're aware. If you don't realize, say you really feel badly about yourself for some reason, something has triggered you. Maybe something at work didn't go right and it's triggered you and now you're not feeling good about yourself. And you go home and what often happens is you bite the head off of your loved one that meets you at the door, or your kids didn't do something quite right
Guilty.
and
Yep.
right, and you just like snap at them, right? Because we're caught in that
In that.
negative self-image, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So, this is a quote I love very much. I wanted to share with you. The writers, Esther and Jerry Hicks, who talk about the words of Abraham, they have this beautiful quote and they say, "My greatest gift to give is my happiness."
Yep.
So, I don't know, I'm thinking about children for some reason today a lot. And when you go in the door, your kids don't really care if you have a gift for them. They don't really care how much money you made that day. They really care if you're smiling. They really care if you are present to them and can embrace them for a moment. And I taught teenagers for a long time at a performing arts high school. And I always say teenagers are, because I've taught from the very, very young to the very, very old. Teenagers are the most powerful teachers
Yep.
of teachers, right? And of parents, right? Because teenagers have they're not in the ideal sense, they're individuating, so they're really pushing against everything. They're saying, is this me, is this not me, right? So, and when a teenager's saying, you're stupid, or that's wrong, or you don't know anything, really they're just trying to find their own boundaries. They're trying to individuate themselves.
Yep.
And if we can stay in our own sense of self, in our own loving space, and be like, yeah, I'm going to be here supporting you as you work that out, and I love you. I love you even right now.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned teaching, and I know today we want to talk about your teacher certification program as well.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So one of the wonderful, 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 wonderful ways of endeavoring into something like a yoga teacher training program is perhaps just an interest in deepening your own practice. And as we're talking today, deepening our practice could just mean to many people at first getting better in the yoga poses, right? Like, I
Yep.
want to have a deeper warrior two. I want to have a stronger balance in tree pose. It can mean so many of those things physically, and that will happen. I guarantee you that will happen. You will strengthen your body by taking an immersion into the practices of yoga. And we'll study the physicality of your body, the anatomy. We'll do it from an experiential point of view. So I've had been blessed to have students who are in the medical field who say, I've studied this in books, but I never knew what it felt like. Like, I never felt what my hip socket actually feels like moving. Or, oh, this is the range of motion in my shoulder. I understood the shoulder girdle, but not my shoulder. So I'm very passionate about helping people embody their body with as much knowledge and intelligence as we can. So the physical piece comes, and that's very important. It's very important to me as well. And the tradition of yoga that I have studied is the Iyengar method. And Iyengar was beautiful and profound in telling us that the physical poses can be a path of transformation as well as meditation. It doesn't have to be just sitting still and quietly. And I think that's one reason why Westerners, really gravitate to this, because we often can't just sit still and become quiet in the mind. We often do much better by moving our body, getting things going, and then, getting a little bit calmer through there, and then being able to quiet the mind. But in the teacher training program, we'll also dive into the philosophy of yoga. And that's kind of what we've been talking about today. So these kinds of transformations help and happen. Jessica Char says, if you want to know if your yoga is getting better, you can look in your relationships in your life. Are your
Mhm.
relationships getting better, right? And especially our relationship with ourselves. So we'll look at the ability to concentrate the mind, which is essential for meditation, and the ability to clear the mind for creative thought and spontaneity. Um, there are so many aspects of even our spirituality comes into play in that how we think about life, how we think about our connection with the universe, whether that is through a universal connection with nature, or if you have your own particular religious beliefs. And I always want people to understand that yoga is not a religion, but because it does talk and speak and reach into your spirituality, if you have a spiritual practice, it will only make it stronger.
Beautiful. Wow. And by the way, just remind everyone of your contact information before we continue.
Yes. Okay. So my name is Frankie Hart, and I'm here with Satya Life Yoga. And our website is Satya, Satya, life.com. You can call or text us at 863-802-YOGA, or email us at info@satyalife.com.
Great. So again, this is for certification, but there's also the immersion courses as well. Can you
Yes.
explain that one a little further or a little
Oh,
deeper? Thanks.
yes, I love the immersion path, because right now I have a teacher. He first came to the program because he just wanted to do immersion, and that's how he said it. I just want to do immersion because I want to do this for myself. And he did both the 200 and 300 hour programs as immersion student. And then
Mhm.
later, his life situation changed. He had more free time, and he said, "Now I want to finish and I want to get certified and teach." But he took the path that was right for him. I have other students who never want to teach, but really want to go deeper into their own practice. I call them, what my students have often called them, the yoga staycations. So you have a weekend, a 1 weekend a month where you really just get to focus on your practice. And the way it's scheduled is so people who work can also attend Thursday evenings, Friday evenings, and then Saturday and Sunday during the day. But when I first myself was teaching yoga, we're going back so far, Jill, that there really weren't even certification programs,
Can't
right?
believe it. I guess yoga does a body good, and there's living proof in front of me. For
Oh,
those of you
thank
just on the
you.
podcast, we're also live on Zoom. But when you check out the website, you'll see she looks amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted, I had just moved to Florida and I wanted to take a class with a guest artist that the studio in Tampa was bringing in. So I called, I had this wonderful conversation with this other woman who's a yogi. So, of course, we have so much in common. And she said, well, come to the workshop, but she's teaching as part of our teacher training program. So you might consider that. Well, I was already teaching, and I was teaching a great deal of dance at that time. So I was teaching and performing. I had my own dance company, and my life was very full. So I thought, oh my goodness, I don't want to do anything more. I just want to do yoga for me and teach just a little bit, right? But you know how it goes, the universe smiles. So I went and took this course, and then I thought, well, I just want to continue to dive into this level of training for myself. And then little by little, a beautiful story, and it's not a sad story to me because it was a beautiful gift. So the woman that I connected to first, a couple years later, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she uh, was only given a small amount of time to live. And through her transition, Jill, it, like we were saying, yoga at any age, but yoga at any stage. Being with her and watching her teach and practice through the whole last period of her life was transformative for me, because I was much younger. I had never been with somebody through that whole process that I was close to before.
Hmm.
But that was when I was like, well, I've got to finish getting certified because I want her signature on my certificate. It became a very personal and passionate thing, as a honoring this dear friend of mine. But who knew that years later my life would transform in the way that it has, where I am now teaching others to be yoga teachers. So I always tell people, if you're passionate about pursuing something, just step through that door, because who knows where the universe is taking you.
It's true. And for those out there who may be new to this, yoga and this practice, and what would you say to them? Because it's for beginners too, and people get a little apprehensive.
Yes, yes. So if you're a brand new beginner, then I really recommend, if you're really interested, then the immersion program would be perfect for you, because we have 9 dedicated weekends, 9 months of this practice, you will catapult your practice so much further than just taking weekly classes, because you'll start to understand and study all of the 8 limbs of yoga.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. My goodness. What else do you want to share before we go?
Well, I had just written a little something that I wanted to share, and I'd love to read it to
Sure.
you and our guests. So, practicing proper postures, these are the
Oh gosh.
physical forms, whether
I
they're
sat up. I was like, okay, no.
wonderful, Jill. See, it's those little reminders, right? Isn't it? So, practicing proper postures, and I am key on saying that is your posture during the day, because what you're doing on the mat only is so much of the day. So, being aware of your posture all day long is part of our practice, whether these are the yoga asanas or the Tai Chi forms. Transforming negative emotion, like we were just talking about. Eating well, eating consciously, enjoying deep sleep, developing loving relationships, having a meaningful career, and owning your own power, which we are talking about, which is understanding that you are good enough, that you deserve to be happy, that you are a person of value just by being who you are, all lead to establishing a quiet mind. And a quiet mind can cultivate life force energy. This is essential. A quiet mind can cultivate life force energy. The practices of yoga and qigong or tai chi help us to achieve the strong body and quiet mind. And then these paths can begin to reveal insights into achieving higher states of being, higher states of vibration, which is where we bring about healing and transformation.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Jill.
Now,
I just
Satya
want people to
Yoga.
be inspired.
Thank you. I'm sure so many are. How do we reach out to you again? Would you mind sharing?
Love it. Satya, Satya, life, Life, satyalife.com. Or you can give us a call or text us at 863-802-YOGA.
Beautiful. Thank you again for being here. Great
Thank you,
inspiration today, as
Jill.
always. You have a great day. Enjoy the hot, beautiful weather. It's hot here in New York, too. And looking forward to the next time we speak, Frankie. Thank you.
Me too, Jill.
Bye
Namaste.
bye. Namaste.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.